There's a stone, weathered by time, etched with lines that don't look like anything natural. They're deep, deliberate, and strange in their precision. It's not a tool mark, nor a crack in the rock. These lines were made by hands, not by nature, and they were made long before we had words. These marks are the first whispers of expression. They are not language, not yet, but they are the beginning of something that would change everything. In those lines, we find a bridge between the unknown and the known. A bridge built not with words, but with meaning. We're talking about the earliest forms of human communication. The first marks etched into stone, not by tools, but by hands, by fingers, by the raw instinct to leave something behind. These marks were not just symbols. They were a language of survival, a way to remember, to warn, to connect across time and space. They were not the strokes of a tool, but the weight of a life, a mark of a presence, the echo of a voice in a time before words. These marks were the first attempt to bridge the silence of the world, to carve a voice into the unyielding earth. They were not art. They were necessity. They were memory. They were the origin of expression itself. You think your words are powerful, but consider the weight of the first mark, the first stroke, the first symbol. It was not just a line. It was a question, a whisper, a claim to existence. Every time you speak, you're part of a lineage that began with those first fragile lines. You're not just using language. You're carrying the memory of a human being who dared to leave something behind. To care about the first marks on stone is to care about how meaning is made, and how you too are a maker of meaning. You are not just a user of language. You are its heir. There is something deeply human in the act of leaving a mark. Even if it's just a note, a tweet, or a text, it is an assertion of being, of presence, of connection across time and space. So, if you ever feel disconnected from the past, remember that you are still part of that ancient story. You are still making your own first marks, just in a different language, a different medium, but the same impulse. The first marks on stone were not symbols, but scars. The imprint of fingers, the drag of a sharp edge, the deliberate etching of a human hand against the cold, unyielding surface of the earth. They were not meant to be read, but to be felt. A record of touch, of presence, of a mind that had found a way to leave something behind in a world that otherwise forgot. Then came the symbols, not as language, but as a bridge, a way to cross the chasm between the immediate and the eternal, between the self and the world. These marks were not the start of writing, but the start of something that would change how humans saw themselves, as makers, as storytellers, as those who could shape the world with their own hands. We are still here, still carving, still trying to make sense of the world with our hands and our minds. And the first marks on stone are the beginning of that endless, silent conversations. Imagine you're sitting in the dark, holding a piece of stone. You look around and there's nothing but silence. But then you notice something. A mark, a line, a shape. It's not random, it's a message. That mark is the first step. It's not a picture or a word. It's a thought, a question, a feeling. It's the first time someone said, "This is how I see the world." That mark was a way to remember, to share, to feel. It was the first time someone said, "This is real," and it changed the world forever. We don't know who made that first mark, but we know it was someone who wanted to leave something behind. A message, a memory, a sign that we were here. That mark was the beginning, a line in the dark, a whisper in the silence, and from that whisper, The world learned how to speak. Before the first mark was ever made, there was silence. A silence not of absence, but of possibility. The world was whole, yet waiting for a voice. The tools were simple, shaped by hands and will. A flint, a stone, a purpose. The act of creation was not random. It was a choice, a beginning. The surface was not blank. It was a world in itself, a canvas of memory and material. Every line would speak to the land, to the maker, to those who would come after. The first movement was not a stroke, but a thought, a decision made in the quiet between the world and the self. The mark would not be just on stone, it would be on time. This was not an accident. It was a beginning, a question, a promise. The first mark was not just on stone. It was on the edge of understanding. The first marks were not random. They were deliberate, shaped by hands that had learned to control pressure, to feel the resistance of stone, to measure the weight of a tool. Each line, each groove, was a choice made in the dark, in the cold, in the silence of a world that had no words. They were not just scratches, they were the first whispers of intention. There is a rhythm in this process, a pulse that connects the maker to the material. It is a slow, ancient rhythm, not of sound, but of touch and time. These marks were not just physical. They carried meaning, perhaps not yet fully understood, but felt as something that mattered, that belonged. The mechanism is simple, but it is profound. It is the bridge between thought and material, between the mind and the world it seeks to shape. The moment the first marks were made, the world changed. These lines were not just symbols. They were the first language of meaning, the first whisper of thought in stone. What made these marks special was not their shape, but the idea behind them. They were not random, not mere scratches. They were the first attempt to hold a thought, to leave something behind that could be read by others. The twist was in the realization that these marks could carry meaning beyond the moment. They could be a message, a warning, a claim of ownership, or a story. This was the first step toward something bigger than the self. This was not just art, not just ritual. It was the beginning of a way to think, to record, to connect across time and space. These marks were the birth of meaning itself. In that moment, the stone became more than stone. It became a mirror, a record, a bridge. It carried the weight of the first human thought. Beneath the surface of these ancient marks lies a science older than language itself. The minerals in the stone, the pressure applied, the chemical reactions, these are the echoes of a silent, invisible world. Each groove, each indentation is a fingerprint of the tool used. The composition of the stone, the force applied, the angle of impact, all are part of a hidden language of material interaction. Scientists today use lasers and microscopes to study these marks, but the same hand that carved them thousands of years ago left behind the same questions about intent, material, and meaning. In these ancient marks, we find the quiet, relentless pursuit of understanding, a desire to leave something behind, to touch the world in a way that lasts beyond the moment. We are all born with the instinct to leave something behind, a mark, a sound, a gesture, a way to say, I was here. The first people did not write to communicate, but to remember, to keep track of time, of kin, of the world that shaped them. These marks were not words, but echoes. Echoes of breath, of touch, of a life lived and passed on. To look at those first marks is to look into the eyes of our ancestors, not as they were, but as they chose to be seen. In the end, We are all just trying to leave a mark. Not on stone, but on the world, on the people who come after us. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. Imagine standing in a cave, the air thick with silence, the walls alive with ancient markings that defy time and language. These symbols, etched by prehistoric hands, are not just random marks. They are echoes of a mind reaching beyond the known. In their simplicity lies a complexity that challenges our understanding of what it means to communicate, to create, to be human. These are not just drawings. They are a language waiting to be decoded, a bridge between the past and the present. As we gaze upon these ancient symbols, we are not just observers. We are participants in a conversation that began thousands of years ago. We're talking about a language older than words, a system of meaning that predates spoken language. These symbols are not just marks on a cave wall. They are the first attempts to communicate thought, to capture the ineffable. They are the earliest form of human expression, a universal language that transcends time and culture. Each symbol is a question, a statement, a feeling, something that invites us to step into the mind of someone who lived tens of thousands of years ago. These are not random scratches or accidental stains. They are deliberate, crafted with intention, meant to convey something beyond the physical. They are the first whispers of a language we have yet to fully understand. We are not just looking at art, we are looking at thought. These symbols are the first attempts to encode meaning, to create a shared understanding between individuals who may have never met. In these symbols, we find the roots of all human communication. They are the seeds of language, the origin of meaning, and the foundation upon which all future expression is built. Symbols are not just ancient scribbles. They are the earliest whispers of human thought. They are the first attempts to make the invisible visible, to give meaning to the world before language could carry it. To study these symbols is to peer into the mind of a human who lived 10,000 years ago. It is to wonder, what did they see, what did they feel, and what did they hope to leave behind for those who would come after? To care about prehistoric art is to care about the origins of meaning itself. It is to recognize that the way we make sense of the world began long before we had words. In a world that moves faster than thought, it is easy to forget that we are all still learning. The symbols of the past remind us that meaning is not given. It is made, and it is always evolving. So, yes, you should secretly care about this, because the language of symbols is not just about the past. It is about you. It is about how you see the world and how you might change it. The first symbols were not written words, but echoes of thought, carved into stone, painted on cave walls, etched into bones. They were not just marks, but the first language of meaning. In the deep dark of prehistory, these images were acts of communication between individuals, between generations, between the seen and the unseen. As time moved forward, these symbols grew more complex. Figures with eyes, shapes with meaning, signs that hinted at something beyond the immediate. They were not just art. They were a bridge between the tangible and the imagined, between the past and the future, between the individual and the collective memory. In the blink of an eye, the slow pace of prehistoric life was compressed into a flash of symbols, each one a step toward the written word, a leap toward meaning. Imagine you're standing in a cave, holding a torch, and you see a painting of a bison. It's not just a picture, it's a story. It's like someone tried to say, look, this is how we live, how we hunt, how we survive. Symbols are like secret messages. They don't tell you everything, but they give you a clue. They help you understand what mattered most to the people who made them. Symbols are like a language without words. They speak in pictures, in lines, in dots. They help us remember, and they help us feel. So when we look at these ancient symbols, we're not just looking at art. We're looking at a way of thinking, a way of living, a way of being in the world. Before any image is drawn, the mind must be prepared. The artist, whether hunter or shaman, sets the scene not just with charcoal or ochre, but with intent. This is not a random act of mark-making. It is a ritual of focus. The act of drawing is a way to bring the unseen into the tangible, to give form to what cannot be spoken. The setup begins with the choice of medium. A single line may be drawn with a fingertip, or a series of dots may be created using a bone tool. Each material carries its own weight of meaning. The artist must also consider the space. A cave wall is not an empty canvas. It is a boundary between the known world and the unknown. Every mark must be placed with care. The environment itself becomes part of the setup. The wind, the light, the temperature, all of these elements shape the conditions under which meaning is created. This is the first step in the process, not just to draw, but to be drawn into the act. The artist becomes a conduit, a bridge between the physical and the symbolic, the seen and the sacred. To understand how symbols work, we must first consider their structure. Symbols are not arbitrary. They are built from patterns, repetition, and abstraction. These elements are the foundation upon which meaning is constructed. Repetition is the first step in encoding meaning. By repeating certain shapes or marks, prehistoric artists created a kind of language that could be recognized and understood by others. This repetition was not just aesthetic, it was functional. Abstraction allows symbols to carry multiple layers of meaning. A simple line or circle can represent a variety of things: life, death, movement, or power, depending on context and culture. This flexibility is what gives symbols their enduring power. The mechanism of symbolic communication is not just about encoding meaning. It's about shared understanding. Symbols are only meaningful if they are understood by a group, which means they must be taught, learned, and passed down through generations. This process of encoding and decoding is at the heart of human cognition. Symbols are not just marks on a wall. They are the first steps in how we think, communicate, and connect across time and space. The clever twist lies not in the symbols themselves, but in their arrangement. How they are placed in relation to one another, as if the space between them carries meaning. This spatial logic suggests a deeper understanding of form, a kind of proto-geometry that precedes written language, yet operates with an almost architectural precision. In this way, prehistoric art does not merely represent the world. It reconfigures it, offering a new framework for understanding existence, time, and the self. This is the clever twist. To use space not just as a canvas, but as a language, where the void between symbols is as significant as the symbols themselves. Beneath the surface of these ancient marks lies a science older than language itself. A silent, mathematical language of form and rhythm that mirrors the natural world. These symbols are not random. They follow patterns that echo the cycles of the sun, the flow of water, and the motion of the stars. Natural rhythms that prehistoric humans could not yet name, but could feel. This is the science of resonance, how symbols, like sound, can carry meaning across time and space, even without words to explain them. To look at these symbols is to witness the birth of thought itself, and attempt to make sense of a chaotic world through the language of pattern, repetition, and form. Imagine a child drawing on a cave wall with a stick and charcoal, not to impress others, but to make sense of the world around them. This is the essence of prehistoric art, not decoration, but a form of early cognition. Their drawings are not meant to be understood by outsiders, but to anchor meaning in the mind. They are the first naps of thought, the first attempts to record what is seen and felt. In this moment, we see the birth of meaning. The line is drawn not to represent something, but to be something. The mark is made not for others, but for the self. This is the origin of all symbolic thought. Not a grand revelation, but a simple act of creation. Drawing to remember, drawing to name, drawing to belong. In this, we find a truth that is both humbling and profound. The most ancient language is not written in books or spoken in voices, but etched into the human spirit. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. The night is long, the fire is low, and the stories are heavy. We gather not for warmth, but for the weight of words that have traveled through time. In the hush between breaths, the past begins to speak. Voices rise from the ashes, shaped by memory and the hands that passed them down. This is not just a story. It's a heartbeat, a pulse of ancestors, a whisper of the ones who came before us, telling us how to live, how to remember. We listen not just with our ears, but with our bones. Every story is a spark, and every memory is a flame that lights the way through the dark. Tonight, we do not just hear a story. We become part of it. And in becoming part of it, we remember who we are. We gather round, not just for warmth, but for the weight of words. Firelight flickers, casting shadows on faces etched with stories older than the trees. Each story is a thread, woven through time. It is not just told, but felt, passed from hand to hand like a sacred object. Oral traditions are the heartbeat of memory. They are the rhythm of our ancestors, the pulse that keeps our history alive in the dark. In every story, there is a song. Not just of words, but of memory, of survival, of belonging. It is the fire that binds us to the past. You think stories are just tales, but they're the threads of who we are. They stitch the past to the present, whispering through generations like a heartbeat you never notice until it stops. When you tell a story, you're not just sharing words, you're handing down a map that shows where you've been, where you're going, and where you've lost your way. Oral traditions are the quiet rebellion against forgetting. They're the way we keep alive what the world might try to erase. Truths, names, and the rhythm of our ancestors' lives. To care about this is to care about yourself. Because every story you've ever heard, every myth you've ever believed, is a piece of you. It's how you came to know the world before you knew how to write it. So maybe you don't realize it, but you already care. You care because you've been shaped by stories, just like the ones that have shaped the world. The first fire was a question, a whisper in the dark, and the first storyteller was a child who remembered the stars. In the silence between breaths, they carved stories into bone and skin, and memory became a language that outlived the body. Warriors carried tales of glory like weapons, and lovers wove their names into songs that would outlive the wars they fought. The fire never slept, and neither did the stories. They passed through generations like seeds in the wind, growing roots in the soil of time. Even now, when the world is loud and the screen is bright, we still gather around the fire, our own, made of light and data and shared silence. Imagine a fire, warm and low, and someone sitting close, telling a story. Their voice is soft, but it holds the whole world. The story isn't just words. It's a map, a memory, a way to find your way through the dark. Stories are like seeds. Planted in the mind, they grow into something that lasts longer than the fire itself. When the fire goes out, the story stays. It lives in your heart, like a whisper that never fades. That's what memory is, a fire that never goes out, and the stories are the light. The fire crackles, a heartbeat in the dark. It hums with the memory of those who came before, lighting the way for stories yet to be told. A circle forms, not by command, but by instinct. People drawn together by the pull of shared silence and the promise of voice. The host finds their place, not at the center, but at the edge of the circle, where the story is both begun and carried. The first words are not spoken with certainty, but with reverence, like a seed falling into the earth, waiting for the right moment to sprout. The story begins not with a loud voice, but with a whisper, something that lingers in the air, as if the fire itself is listening. The storyteller, with a voice like wind through dry leaves, begins to weave the tale, not with precision, but with rhythm, each word a spark in the dark. The audience leans in, eyes fixed, breath held, as the firelight dances across their faces, casting flickering shadows like memories long forgotten. The story is not just told, but lived. The words are a map, the listeners the explorers, each tale a path to the past, to the soul of the people. The rhythm of the voice, the rise and fall, the pause and return, it is a heartbeat, a pulse that connects the past to the present, the speaker to the listener. In this moment, the fire is not just a source of warmth. It is a witness, a keeper of stories, a living archive of memory passed from hand to hand, from heart to heart. The story is told, but then the twist. It's not just about the truth. It's about the lie, the shadow, the echo that lingers. The twist is the spark that makes the memory burn again. The twist comes not as a surprise, but as a revelation. It's the moment when the story turns, like a river carving a new path through the land. The audience leans in, breath held, waiting for the next word. The twist is often a question, a challenge, or a hidden truth. It's the part that makes the memory live again, not just repeat. It's the moment when the story becomes something more than itself. And so the twist is the heart of the story. It's the part that binds us, that makes us listen, that makes us feel. It's the memory we carry, not just of the words, but of the fire and the people who gathered around it. In the marrow of memory, stories are not just told, they are remembered as if they were lived. The brain, with its neural pathways, becomes the keeper of these tales, threading them through time like a loom. Neuroscience shows that when we hear a story, our brains simulate the experience. We feel the fear, the joy, the pain. Our own neural fire is kindled by the words of another. Stories are encoded in rhythm and repetition, and in the human brain, these patterns are not just heard. They are felt. They form the architecture of memory, shaping how we remember and how we belong. The fire is not just a source of warmth. It is a metaphor for the brain's own inner flame, the place where stories are stored, recalled, and passed on like sparks through the dark. In the science of storytelling, there is magic. The brain, with all its complexity, is a kind of storyteller too, constructing meaning, weaving past and present, and preserving the world through the power of words. A story is like a campfire in the dark. It doesn't need a spotlight. It thrives in the hush of the night, when the world is still and the silence hums with the weight of what's to come. You don't light a fire to be seen. You light it to be heard. The story is the flame, and the listener is the ember, waiting to catch the glow. Stories are not built for the mind, but for the heart. They are the breath between the words, the pause that makes the truth feel real. Oral traditions are not just stories. They are the rhythm of memory, the way we hold the world together when the written word has long since faded. To tell a story is to let the fire burn itself into you, to carry it forward, even when the flames go out. In the end, we are all just keepers of the flame, not because we are smart, but because we remember. And that is enough. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. Imagine a world without words, where stories are passed down through memory, and knowledge is fragile, fleeting. Then, one day, something changed. A new way to capture thought, to preserve history, to build the foundation of civilization itself. This is the moment when the first symbols were pressed into clay, marking the beginning of human expression beyond the spoken word. It was a turning point, a quiet revolution that would shape the course of history. These symbols, carved into stone or pressed into clay, were the first steps toward a written language. They were not just marks on a surface. They were the seeds of a new kind of communication, a bridge between generations. In the silence of the past, these symbols spoke volumes about gods, kings, and the human desire to remember. They were a form of magic, a way to freeze the moment in time and give it permanence. This is the birth of the written word, not just a tool, but a legacy. A legacy that continues to echo through the ages, shaping the way we think, speak, and remember. So what exactly are we talking about? We're looking at the very first systems of writing ever created. Systems that transformed human communication forever. These were not just symbols, but the roots of language itself. Cuneiform, meaning wedge-shaped, was developed by the Sumerians in Mesopotamia around 3100 BCE. It was created by pressing a reed stylus into wet clay, leaving behind permanent marks that could be read and recorded. Meanwhile, in ancient Egypt, hieroglyphs were born as a visual language that combined symbols, phonetic signs, and ideograms. They were used to record religious texts, royal decrees, and everyday life, each symbol carrying layers of meaning. Both systems were complex, requiring years of training to master. They were not just tools for writing. They were the foundation of history, law, and culture. It gave people a way to preserve their thoughts beyond the span of a single lifetime. These early scripts were not just records of the past. They were acts of creation. They allowed societies to imagine the future, to dream, to build, and to remember. They were the first steps in a journey that would lead to the written word we know today. You might think this is just ancient history, but the way we communicate today is built on the same principles that first shaped cuneiform and hieroglyphs. Every text message, every book, every legal document is a descendant of those early symbols. Understanding the origins of writing helps you see how language evolved from mere symbols into the complex systems we use today. It's a bridge between the past and the present, a silent conversation across millennia. When you read a book, you're not just consuming information. You're participating in a tradition that began in the hands of scribes who carved meaning into clay and stone. These early scripts weren't just tools for record-keeping. They were acts of creativity, power, and identity. They shaped civilizations and, in doing so, shaped you. So, yes, you should care. Not because it's ancient, but because it's foundational. Every word you write, every idea you share, is part of a legacy that began with the first stroke of a reed stylus. In the shadow of the Zagros Mountains, a farmer pressed symbols into clay. This was the birth of cuneiform, the first script humanity ever created. It was not just writing, but the first step toward recording thought itself. Meanwhile, in the fertile banks of the Nile, priests and scribes etched symbols into stone, using hieroglyphs to immortalize the gods, the pharaohs, and the rhythms of the cosmos. These early scripts were more than communication. They were the roots of culture, the way civilizations remembered who they were and what they had learned. The written word was not just a tool, but a revolution. It allowed humans to outlive their thoughts, to pass on wisdom, and to build something that outlasted the body. From clay to stone, from reed to chisel, the written word began as a human impulse to preserve, to explain, and to endure. Long ago, people didn't write with pens or paper. They used sticks to make marks on clay. These marks were like pictures that told stories about their lives. These marks were not just drawings. They were the first words. They helped people remember things, like who ruled or what happened in the past. The symbols looked different in different places. One place used pictures, and another used lines and angles. But they all helped people connect with their history. Even though these marks were made long ago, they helped shape the world we live in today. They were the first step in learning to share ideas across time and space. Before the first symbol was carved, there had to be a purpose, a need to record, to remember, to preserve something beyond the spoken word. This need shaped the earliest scribes and their tools. The scribe, often a priest or a scholar, would sit in a quiet space, surrounded by tools that felt both sacred and practical. Each tool was a key to unlocking the world of symbols. The materials were simple but essential: clay for cuneiform, papyrus for hieroglyphs. Each medium required a different touch, a different approach to shaping meaning into form. The act of writing was not just a technical skill. It was a spiritual and intellectual act. Every mark carried weight, every symbol a story waiting to be told. The setup was more than a workspace. It was a place where language was born, where thought was made visible, and where the first steps toward civilization were etched into the earth. Once the scribe has prepared the clay, the next step is to press the stylus into the soft surface. The tool is held at an angle, allowing the wedge-shaped impressions to form with precision and clarity. Each wedge represents a syllable or a logogram, depending on the system being used. The scribe must maintain consistent pressure and angle to ensure the symbols are readable by others. As the symbols take shape, the scribe may pause to adjust the orientation of the tablet or the angle of the stylus, ensuring that the script flows logically across the surface. Once the script is complete, the scribe may leave the tablet to dry, or in some cases, bake it to harden the clay permanently, preserving the message for future generations. This process, though ancient, laid the foundation for all writing systems that followed. Each wedge, each stroke, was a step toward recording human thought and experience. The final twist in both systems was the introduction of phonetic symbols. These allowed for more flexible and expressive communication, moving beyond mere pictorial representation to capture the sound of words themselves. In cuneiform, this meant adding logograms and syllabrams to the original pictographs, creating a hybrid system that combined sound and meaning with remarkable sophistication. This clever twist allowed both systems to evolve beyond their initial forms, giving rise to more complex and nuanced ways of expressing thought, identity, and power. It was this blending of sound and image that made writing not just a tool for record-keeping, but a means of shaping history, culture, and civilization itself. Beneath the surface of these ancient scripts lies a quiet revolution in human cognition. The act of inscribing symbols onto clay or stone was more than communication. It was the first step toward abstract thought, a way to fix the fleeting in the permanent. Each wedge, each line, was a code, a bridge between the known and the unknowable. These symbols were not just letters. They were ideas, stored in the material world, waiting to be read by future minds. The process of writing required patience, precision, and an understanding of the world that was both physical and conceptual. It was not just about recording events. It was about structuring time, space, and meaning itself. This science of writing was not just for the elite. It shaped the way societies organized themselves, from trade to law, from religion to history. It was the foundation upon which all later scripts would be built. In the quiet of time, these scripts hum with the echoes of human ingenuity. They are not just relics of the past, but the first whispers of a science that would one day give voice to the universe itself. Imagine a world where every thought you have is locked inside your head, and no one can ever know what you're thinking until you learn to write. Cuneiform and hieroglyphs were like the first keys to that locked room, tools that turned the private into the public, the ephemeral into the eternal. Writing was not just a means of communication. It was a revolution, a way of seeing the world that changed everything. So, in the end, the birth of the written word was not just about symbols or language. It was about the first time humanity dared to say, "Let the world remember." Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. Imagine a world where knowledge was locked away, accessible only to the few. In that world, ideas were controlled, and the power of thought was a privilege. Then came a machine, simple yet revolutionary, that would change everything. It wasn't just a tool, it was an idea made real. This was no ordinary invention. It was a weapon against ignorance, and it would spark a movement that would reshape humanity. The printing press didn't just print words. It printed freedom, and it began a long, slow shift toward a more open and informed world. What started as a single machine would ripple through history, turning the tide of knowledge from the elite to the many. So what exactly are we talking about? The printing press wasn't just a machine. It was a revolution in thought. Before it, knowledge was locked away in the hands of a few, guarded and controlled. Imagine trying to read a book with acrylic and ink, only to have it fade or smudge. That's what people faced before the printing press. It was slow, error-prone, and costly. With the press, knowledge wasn't just preserved, it was shared. People could read about science, philosophy, and politics for the first time in their own homes. This wasn't just about books. It was about power. The press gave people a voice, and with that voice came the possibility of change. So, when we talk about the printing press, we're not just talking about technology. We're talking about the birth of a more open, informed, and democratic world. You might not think about it, but every time you read a newspaper, use a textbook, or scroll through a news article, you're standing on the shoulders of Gutenberg's invention. The printing press didn't just change how we got information. It changed who got to hold it. The press made knowledge no longer the privilege of the elite. It opened the door for ordinary people to question authority, to learn for themselves, and to shape the world they lived in. That's why it's the foundation of modern democracy. You should care because the ability to read, to think, and to share ideas is still under threat. The same forces that tried to control knowledge in the past are trying again in new forms. The printing press taught us how to fight back. In a world where misinformation spreads faster than ever, remembering the power of the printed word is more important than ever. The printing press didn't just spread ideas, it gave us the tools to challenge power. So, yes, it might seem like an old story, but if you care about the future of truth, of education, of freedom, then the printing press is still one of the most powerful stories we've ever told. The printing press was not just a machine, but a revolution. It was the first time knowledge could be copied with speed and precision, breaking the monopoly of scribes and monks. In 1440, Johannes Gutenberg's press in Mainz became the spark that changed everything. It turned the production of books from years into weeks, making texts more accessible than ever before. The press didn't just spread knowledge, it spread dissent. It gave people the tools to question authority, to challenge dogma, and to imagine a world beyond what they had been told. By the 16th century, the press had become the engine of the Renaissance and Reformation. It was no longer about just copying texts. It was about shaping thought and the future of society. Imagine a world where only a few people could read, and most of the world's stories were kept in locked rooms. That's what life was like before the printing press. Then, one day, a machine changed everything. It could copy words quickly and make them available to everyone, not just the rich or the powerful. With more books came more ideas. People started asking questions, sharing stories, and learning from each other in ways that had never been possible before. The printing press wasn't just a tool. It was the first step in making knowledge belong to everyone, not just to a few. Before the first word is inked, the press must be set. A heavy wooden frame stands at the center of the workshop, its iron clamps waiting to hold the block of type. The type is sorted with care. Each letter, each symbol, a piece in a grand puzzle. The printer arranges them by hand, one by one, into a composing stick. Once the line is complete, it's carefully transferred to a form, a flat metal plate covered in a thin layer of wet paper. The form is then locked into place with iron clamps, ensuring every character is perfectly aligned and ready for the press. Now, the press is ready. The operator grips the handle, exerts force, and the block of type is pressed against the paper, sealing the first word into history. Now we move to the second step in the printing process, the mechanism. This is where the press actually transfers the ink from the movable type to the paper. The operator places the ink roller over the type, and then lowers the press's heavy plate onto the paper. The pressure between the paper and the type forces ink through the raised surfaces of the letters. The mechanism is simple in design, but powerful in effect. It allows for the mass production of text, transforming the labor of scribes into the rhythm of mechanical repetition. Each press run could produce hundreds of pages in a single hour, a stark contrast to the painstaking work of hand copying. This efficiency was the first step in making knowledge accessible to many. In this second step, the printing press does not just transfer ink, it transfers ideas. It turns the abstract concept of knowledge into something tangible, something shareable. The clever twist lies in the way the movable type is arranged. Each letter is a separate piece, and they are arranged by hand into words and lines. This system, though simple, allowed for the mass production of text in a way that was previously unimaginable. Once the layout is complete, the entire block of text is inked with a roller, and then pressed onto paper with a heavy press. It's a process that requires patience, precision, and a deep understanding of both form and function. The final step is to dry the printed sheets, and then to separate the individual pages. This meticulous process ensures that each printed page is clean, readable, and ready for distribution. Each printed page is a testament to human ingenuity, a single sheet of paper, transformed through labor and invention, carrying the weight of knowledge and the promise of change. This is the clever twist. The idea that knowledge, once made tangible, could be shared by many, not just a few. It was not just a tool, but a revolution in thought. The printing press didn't just replicate text. It transformed the very nature of knowledge itself. Every press was a machine of precision, with movable type arranged like a puzzle, each letter a tiny revolution. The ink, a blend of soot and water, clung to the type like a whisper of the past, waiting to be set free. It wasn't just a transfer of words. It was a transfer of power, of thought, of identity. In the quiet hum of the press, there was a science of rhythm, of pressure, of time, of repetition. Each print was a mirror of the world it sought to change. The press was more than an invention. It was a language of its own, a way of ordering the chaos of the world into something that could be shared, understood, and remembered. In the science of the press, we find the seed of a new kind of humanity, one that no longer looked upward for knowledge, but outward, into the world, into each other, into the pages of possibility. Imagine a world where knowledge is locked away in the hands of a few, like a treasure buried in a mountain. Only the most powerful can dig it out and decide who gets to see it. Now imagine that same mountain being blasted open by a great machine, spilling gold into the hands of everyone who walks by. The press didn't just spread knowledge. It changed the very idea of who could own it, who could read it, and who could shape the world with it. It was a gloriously dumb analogy, but it got the point across. The press didn't just share knowledge, and made it part of the world, for everyone. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. There's a moment, just before the light hits the canvas, when the artist is still a question that lingers in the silence between brushstrokes. This is where the craft begins, not with a plan, but with a pulse, a trembling hand, a raw impulse, a whisper that insists on being heard. The artist is not a hero, but a seeker. They are drawn to the edge of the known, where the rules of form dissolve and the unknown begins to take shape. In that space, something new is born, not just a work of art, but a question that refuses to be answered, a mirror that reflects not the world, but the soul. This is the beginning of the artist's journey, a journey that starts not with mastery, but with mystery. We talk about the shift from making things to making meaning. The artist no longer just creates objects, but questions the very idea of creation itself. It's not just about skill anymore, but about the courage to confront the unknown and to challenge the world with raw, unfiltered thought. The artist becomes a mirror, reflecting back the fractures of society, the contradictions of human nature, and the weight of our collective imagination. This is not a journey from one place to another, but a transformation within. A quiet revolution that begins in the mind and erupts in the soul. To be an artist is to walk a path where the edges blur, where the line between creator and creation dissolves, and where truth is not found, but made. You think art is just for the few, but it's shaping the world you live in. Subtly, relentlessly, every time you scroll, you're engaging with a culture shaped by artists. The artist isn't just a creator. They're a mirror, reflecting the chaos, the beauty, the questions we can't voice. They make the invisible visible. You may not see it, but the artist is whispering in your mind about love, about loss, about the future you're building without knowing it. To ignore the artist is to ignore the voice that tells you who you are, even when you don't know it. They're not just making things, they're making you. The artist once toiled in the shadows, refining craft, perfecting form, and building a life through discipline and repetition. Then, one day, they looked up and saw the world as something else entirely. Not just to be shaped, but to be questioned. They began to break the rules, not out of rebellion, but out of necessity. The world had changed, and so had they. Their art was no longer a mirror, but a lens, refracting reality into something new, something raw. They were no longer craftsmen, but visionaries. Their work was not for the eye alone, but for the mind, the soul, the unspoken truths that language could not hold. The artist became a prophet, a rebel, a seeker of meaning in a world that had lost its way. Their work was not for the masses, but for those who dared to look beyond the surface, to question, to feel. In the end, the artist's journey was not about mastery, but transformation. From the quiet discipline of craft to the raw, unfiltered truth of the avant-garde, they were no longer making art. They were becoming it. An artist starts with a simple idea, like a drawing on a piece of paper. It's not perfect, but it's real. It's like when you make a mess with crayons and then try to fix it. Over time, that idea grows. It gets more colors, more shapes, more of everything. The artist starts to notice things they didn't before, like how light hits the wall or how a shadow moves. Some artists want to break the rules. They don't just paint what they see, they paint what they feel. They make people see the world differently, even if it hurts. In the end, the artist is not just making art. They're making a choice to feel, to think, to change, and to show the world something that only they can see. The first step is the setup. It begins with a quiet space, a room that holds the weight of creation, where every surface is a canvas for possibility. Here, the artist must choose not just tools, but a mindset, one that separates the craftsman from the visionary. The setup is not about grandeur, but about intention. It's the silent agreement between artist and medium that something meaningful is about to begin. In this space, the artist is both creator and observer, caught between the known and the unknown, the familiar and the forbidden. The setup is the foundation, the first breath before the art begins, a moment that carries the weight of all that is to come. The mechanism begins with the artist's hand, not as a tool, but as an extension of thought, a vessel for intention. Each stroke, each mark, is a whisper of the unseen, a bridge between the mind and the world. But it's not just the hand that moves. It's the mind, the memory, the emotion. The artist is not just creating, but reconfiguring, reimagining, reassembling the fragments of experience into something new. This is where the craft becomes something more. It becomes a language without words, but filled with nuance, with rhythm, with the weight of unspoken truths. The mechanism is not just about the making. It's about the unmaking, the risk, the vulnerability. The artist must trust that the act of creation itself is a form of truth-telling, even if it's not understood. And so, the artist becomes a conduit, not for the world, but for the self. The mechanism is not about control, but about surrender. It is the space where the self becomes something more, something fragile, something real. The twist comes not from grand gestures, but from the quiet act of redefining the rules. It's the artist who dares to ask, what if this is not meant to be seen at all? They might choose to obscure, to mask, to render the work invisible, not as a rejection of the world, but as an invitation to look deeper, to question the very act of looking. This is where the artist becomes a trickster, not in the sense of deception, but in the way they manipulate expectation, turning the audience into a participant in the mystery. The clever twist is not the end of the journey, but a mirror held to the process itself. A reminder that art is not about being seen, but about being felt, even in the absence of form. There is a science to the act of creation, a quiet hum beneath the chaos of expression. It is not just about vision, but about the rhythm of the mind, the pulse of the hand, the precision of the eye. Artists are not just creators, but translators of the unseen. They convert emotion into form, thought into texture, and memory into color, all governed by the silent laws of the material world. The avant-garde does not break the rules. It redefines the language of form. It is not rebellion, but evolution, a reimagining of the possible through the lens of the impossible. In the quiet spaces between inspiration and execution, there is a science of surrender. To let the material guide the hand, the form lead the vision, and the process become its own kind of truth. Art is not just seen. It is felt, and in that feeling lies the hum of the unseen, the science of the soul, the pulse of the human condition, made visible. Imagine a child learning to walk, not with crutches, but with a single step into the unknown. The artist, too, begins with a single step, not of perfection, but of daring. The artist is not a master, but a traveler. They move through the world not to prove themselves, but to feel the weight of their own voice. The avant-garde is not a destination, but a direction. It's the refusal to settle, the insistence on asking, what if, even when the world says, no. In the end, the artist is not a hero, but a student of the unknown. And that's where the magic begins. Not in the answer, but in the question. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. Imagine a world where ideas could reshape society, where reason and imagination were not just tools, but the very engines of change. That world was not in the future, but in the past. In the 17th and 18th centuries, when the Enlightenment ignited a revolution of thought. This was not a time of instant communication or global reach, but it was a time of profound intellectual transformation. Thinkers like Descartes and Voltaire dared to question the world as it was, and in doing so, they dared to imagine a world as it could be. It was a time when the boundaries of knowledge were pushed, and the power of the mind was seen as the ultimate weapon against ignorance and tyranny. This was the age that birthed modern ideas of liberty, equality, and reason. But this was also a time of paradox, where the pursuit of knowledge was both revolutionary and radical, challenging the very foundations of power and belief. Creativity in this age was not just about art. It was about shaping the world itself. So what exactly are we talking about? The Enlightenment wasn't just a period. It was a mindset, a shift in how we saw the world and our place in it. It was a rebellion against ignorance, a call to question everything, including the gods. It was the birth of reason, the belief that human beings could use logic and evidence to understand the universe. Thinkers like Descartes, Locke, and Kant weren't just philosophers. They were revolutionaries in disguise. It was a time of creativity, where art and science began to merge. The printing press allowed ideas to spread like wildfire, and thinkers started to imagine a world where knowledge was the most powerful tool of all. So when we talk about the Enlightenment, we're not just looking back at the past. We're looking at the roots of modern thought, the foundation of progress, and the power of creativity to shape the future. You might not think you're part of a grand historical movement, but every time you solve a problem or create something new, you're carrying forward the torch of the Enlightenment. It's not just about philosophy. It's about how we see the world and how we change it. The Enlightenment wasn't just about ideas. It was about the belief that human reason could lead to better systems, better laws, and better lives. That same belief lives in you, even if you don't always realize it. When you choose to be curious, to question, to create, you're not just acting on your own. It's a continuation of a centuries-old movement that believed in the power of the human mind to build something greater. You don't have to be a philosopher or a scientist to be part of this. What you do matters. Your ideas, your actions, your imagination, they all contribute to the ongoing story of progress. The Enlightenment began not in a grand hall or a royal court, but in the quiet, candlelit study of a thinker in 17th century France. It was there, surrounded by books and ink, that the seeds of reason and progress were first sown. From this humble setting, a revolution of ideas spread across Europe. Thinkers like Descartes, Locke, and Voltaire questioned the old ways, turning faith into reason and tradition into inquiry. This era was not just about philosophy. It was a movement that changed how we see the world, how we govern, and how we think about knowledge itself. It was an intellectual revolution, powered by curiosity and the belief that the truth could be found. The Enlightenment was also a time of contradictions. It celebrated freedom, yet it was often wielded by the powerful. It championed reason, yet it struggled to explain the mysteries of the human heart. But its legacy is undeniable. It laid the groundwork for modern democracy, science, and the belief that every person has the right to think, to question, and to create. So, as we look back, we see that the Enlightenment wasn't just an intellectual era. It was a turning point, a moment when creativity and reason began to shape the future. Imagine a world where ideas can change the way people think, and that change can make the world better. That's what the Enlightenment was all about. Creativity isn't just about art or music. It's about solving problems, asking questions, and trying to understand how things work. When people use their imagination to think differently, they can find new ways to help others and make the world a kinder, smarter place. So the Enlightenment wasn't just about big thinkers. It was about every person using their creativity to build a better future. The Age of Enlightenment began not with a revolution, but with a quiet shift in how we think. It started with a small group of thinkers, gathered in candlelit rooms, questioning the world they inherited. They were not rebels, but curious minds who saw knowledge as a path to freedom. Their goal was not to overthrow the state, but to rebuild society from the ground up using reason and evidence. The first step was to question everything, not in anger, but in curiosity. To ask, what is true? What is just? And how can we know the difference? This questioning spirit was the foundation. It was a promise to seek truth, not just accept it. And in that promise, the Enlightenment began to take shape. At the heart of this mechanism lies a simple yet profound idea that creativity is not just an individual spark, but a collective force. It's the bridge between abstract thought and tangible change. This process begins with observation, not just of the world around us, but of the gaps in our understanding. It's the first step in dismantling ignorance and building knowledge. Then comes the act of creation, not just of art or writing, but of new ways of thinking. It's the transformation of ideas into something that can be shared, tested, and improved upon. Finally, this creative energy is channeled into action. It's not enough to think. We must also build, debate, and apply these ideas to the world. Progress is not passive. It is a result of deliberate, thoughtful effort. This is the mechanism that turned the Enlightenment into an era of lasting transformation. It is a loop of observation, questioning, creation, and action, a cycle that continues to shape our world. The clever twist lies in the idea that creativity isn't just a spark. It's a process. It's not about having the right idea, but knowing how to let the right idea take shape. This twist requires imagination, yes, but also discipline. It's the balance between letting the mind wander and returning to the task at hand with renewed clarity. The clever twist also means embracing failure as part of the process. Progress is not linear, it's a spiral, and every setback is an opportunity to refine the vision. In the end, this twist is about seeing the world not as it is, but as it could be. It's the courage to question, the will to create, and the patience to wait for the idea to fully reveal itself. Beneath the grand ideas of the Enlightenment, a quiet revolution was taking place in the natural world. Scientists were peering into microscopes, revealing the invisible architecture of life itself. They began to see patterns in nature that suggested order, not chaos. This was not just observation. It was the birth of a new language, one that could describe the universe in terms of cause and effect. The discovery of the laws of motion and gravity was more than an intellectual triumph. It was a way of seeing the world as something that could be understood, predicted, and harnessed. This scientific mindset didn't just change how we studied nature. It reshaped how we approach society, politics, and the human condition. It was a way of thinking that demanded evidence, logic, and clarity. The Enlightenment was not just about ideas. It was about the tools that made those ideas possible. And in the quiet hum of laboratories and observatories, the future was being built. Imagine a clockmaker in the 1700s, trying to build a watch without knowing how gears work. He tinkers, fails, and then, by accident, creates something that changes the world. That's the power of creativity in the Enlightenment. He doesn't start with a blueprint, but with questions. What if the gears could turn faster? What if the hands could point to the future? His mistakes become the foundation for new discoveries. Creativity isn't a luxury. It's the engine of progress. It allows us to see problems in new ways, to build bridges between the known and the unknown, and to move humanity forward. So let's not be afraid of being dumb in the sense of being unaware. Let's be bold in our ignorance, and let's build something new, because that's how we advance. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. It began with a spark, not in the sky, but in the factories. A new kind of fire, one that didn't burn wood, but turned coal into power and time into money. This was not just a revolution of machines, but of ideas. The world was changing in ways no one could yet predict. And art, once the domain of the divine, was about to be rewritten. The age of steam and steel was not just about progress. It was also about loss, of tradition, of simplicity, of the handmade. And in that loss, something new was born. In the heart of this transformation, a new kind of art was emerging. Not just a reflection of the world, but a question about it, a challenge to the past and a declaration of the future. This is the story of how the Industrial Revolution didn't just change the way we work. It changed the way we see, feel, and create. So what exactly are we talking about? The Industrial Revolution wasn't just about machines. It was a complete shift in how people worked, lived, and thought. It started in Britain, but its effects rippled across the world. Factories replaced workshops, and the clock replaced the rhythm of the day. Artists began to see the world differently. No longer bound by tradition, they turned to the modern, the urban, the raw, and the real. The Industrial Revolution wasn't just about machines. It was about the human spirit, the clash between progress and tradition, and the birth of a new kind of creativity. This is the story of how machines changed not just the world, but the way we see it. The Industrial Revolution wasn't just about machines. It was about how we see the world. It changed the way we work, live, and even dream. And that shift in perspective is still shaping our culture today. The same forces that built factories also built new ways of thinking. As people moved from rural life to cities, their view of art and beauty began to change. No longer was art just for the elite. It started to reflect the struggles and triumphs of the common person. Modern art wasn't just a product of new materials. It was a product of new ideas. The Industrial Revolution created a world where art could be both personal and political. And that's something we're still dealing with today. Understanding this connection isn't just about history. It's about understanding how our world was shaped by forces we often take for granted. It's about seeing the past and the present and realizing that every revolution, no matter how old, still has power today. So why should you care? Because the same forces that changed the world in the 18th and 19th centuries are still at work today. And if you want to understand the world you live in, you need to understand where it came from. The Industrial Revolution began in the late 18th century, fueled by steam power and factory systems. It was a time of rapid change, where machines replaced manual labor, and cities swelled with new populations seeking work. Artists of the time were deeply affected by these transformations. The world was becoming more mechanical, more structured, and less tied to the rhythms of nature. This shift began to influence how people saw and created art. Meanwhile, in the 1890s, movements like Art Nouveau and Symbolism sought to merge the mechanical with the expressive. Artists began to question the soul of progress and how technology could shape the human spirit. By the early 20th century, the legacy of industrialization was undeniable. It had reshaped not only economies and societies, but also the very language of art, giving rise to new forms of expression and new ways of seeing the world. So, imagine a world where machines start doing the work that people used to do. That's the Industrial Revolution, and it changed everything. It wasn't just about making more things. It was about changing how people thought and created. Before machines, artists made things by hand, with care and meaning. But when machines could make things faster, people started to think about art differently. It wasn't just about making things anymore. It was about thinking about them. The machines didn't just change how things were made. They changed how people saw the world. Art became more about ideas than just pictures, more about feeling than just form. So, the Industrial Revolution wasn't just about machines. It was about the birth of new ideas, new ways of thinking, and new ways of creating art that still shapes the world today. The Industrial Revolution began in the late 18th century, driven by a need for efficiency and scale. Factories replaced workshops, and machines replaced artisans, shifting the economy from rural to urban. Factories were built in towns and cities, offering employment to the growing working class. These spaces were loud, dark, and filled with the rhythmic clatter of machinery. The factory system introduced a new kind of labor, repetitive, standardized, and overseen by strict schedules. Time became a commodity, measured in hours and minutes. This shift from individual craftsmanship to mass production redefined not just labor, but the very idea of creativity and progress. It laid the foundation for a new kind of society. The first step in this transformation was the setup, the building of factories, the invention of machines, and the reorganization of labor around industrial time. Step 2 begins with the engine itself, the heart of the machine. It's a complex assembly of pistons, gears, and steam, all working in precise synchronization to convert heat into motion. Each component has a purpose. The piston pushes and pulls, the crankshaft converts linear motion into rotational, and the flywheel ensures smooth operation. It's a marvel of engineering. This mechanism is not just about power. It's about control. Every movement is measured, every force directed. The machine doesn't just move. It transforms energy into purpose. The mechanism is the foundation upon which the rest of the industrial world is built. It's not just a tool. It's a system of order, efficiency, and relentless motion. The clever twist came when machines didn't just replace hands, but began to redefine the very meaning of creativity itself. Art was no longer solely about skill, but about the interplay between human vision and mechanical precision. Artists started to see machines not as competitors, but as collaborators. They began to use them as extensions of their own vision, crafting new forms that could never be replicated by hand alone. The mechanization of art also made it more accessible, no longer confined to the elite few who could afford to train in a master's workshop. Art began to reach new audiences through reproduction and industrial scale. This shift was not just technical, it was cultural. It forced artists to reconsider their role, to question what art could be, and to embrace a new era where creation and machinery danced in an uneasy, yet revolutionary harmony. Beneath the clatter of machines, there was a quiet revolution in science. The steam engine didn't just power factories. It redefined how we thought about motion, force, and time. Newton's laws, once the bedrock of physics, now guided the design of every spinning loom and rolling mill. Precision became a language of progress. Chemistry, too, was in flux. New compounds and materials promised lighter, stronger, more durable goods, transforming both industry and imagination. This science wasn't just about machines. It was about rethinking the world itself. The old ways of seeing were being replaced by new, mechanical logic. The hum of the machines was more than noise. It was the pulse of a new kind of reality, one built not on the hand, but on the mind and the machine. Imagine a painter who once used only their hands, but now has a brush that moves on its own, guided by invisible strings. It's not perfect, but it's faster, and it changes how art is made. This is like the Industrial Revolution itself. Machines that didn't think, but did the work, allowing humans to imagine new possibilities beyond their own physical limits. The painter is no longer the sole creator. The machine becomes a collaborator, and art becomes something that can be produced, repeated, and even improved. This is the true beauty of the Industrial Revolution. Not just in factories, but in the way it redefined creativity, making art more accessible, more abundant, and more diverse. It's a gloriously dumb analogy, but it captures the essence of how machines change the world, not by replacing humans, but by freeing them to dream in new ways. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. You ever look at a smartphone and wonder, what exactly is it doing when you tap a button? It's not just a tool, it's a universe of code. And in that code, something extraordinary is happening. Creativity, born from the cold, precise language of ones and zeros. This isn't just about apps or social media. It's about how we're shaping the world through lines of code, and in doing so, redefining what it means to be creative in the 21st century. So what exactly are we talking about? It's not just about code or gadgets. It's about the shift in how we create, communicate, and connect. Every click, every swipe, every stream is a new kind of art. We're moving from physical tools to digital ones. The brush becomes the stylus, the canvas becomes the screen, and the artist becomes a coder. It's a redefinition of creativity itself. The digital revolution isn't just about speed or scale. It's about possibility. It's about how we can now create, share, and experience art in ways that were once unimaginable. But with this power comes responsibility. The same tools that let us create can also be used to manipulate, distort, or erase. We have to be conscious of what we're building. So when we talk about the digital revolution, we're not just talking about technology. We're talking about the future of human expression and the role we all play in shaping it. You think creativity is about art, music, or writing, maybe even poetry. But what if I told you that every time you click a button, scroll a page, or stream a video, you're participating in a form of creative expression that's just as profound? The code that runs the world isn't just cold logic. It's the language of possibility, shaping how we see, interact, and even dream. You're not just a user, you're part of an invisible creative ecosystem. The tools are open, the platforms are everywhere, and the power is in your hands. Whether you realize it or not, you're already shaping the world through your choices, your interactions, and your digital footprint. To ignore the digital revolution is to ignore the tools that define your modern life. It's not just about technology. It's about how you engage with it, how you contribute to it, and how it shapes your future. The roots of the digital revolution stretch back to the early 1900s, when engineers first began to imagine machines that could think, not just calculate. In 1936, Alan Turing proposed a theoretical machine that could solve any problem given enough time, a concept that would later become the foundation of modern computing. The 1940s and 1950s brought the first computers, massive machines that filled entire rooms and were operated by teams of skilled technicians. By the 1960s, the dream of personal computing began to take shape, as engineers like Ken Olsen and Digital Equipment Corporation imagined machines that could be owned, not just used. The 1980s brought the rise of the personal computer, and with it, the democratization of creativity. Artists, writers, and musicians could now create without needing a studio or a studio. Today, we stand on the shoulders of those pioneers, as the digital revolution continues to reshape not just how we create, but who we are as creators. Imagine you have a big box of colored blocks. You can stack them any way you want. That's what code is like. It's your box of blocks, and the world is your playground. You don't have to follow the rules. You can build a tower, a bridge, or even a spaceship. Code is like that. It's not just about making things work. It's about making things that never existed before. The best part? You can share your blocks with friends. They can use your blocks to make their own things. That's what code does. It lets you create and share ideas with the whole world. So, code isn't just about computers. It's about imagination, creativity, and the power to turn your ideas into something real. That's what the digital revolution is all about. Before any code is written, there's the foundation, the setup. It's like building a studio for a painter or a lab for a scientist. Every tool, every environment has to be in place to make creation possible. This isn't just about hardware. It's about choosing the right tools, the right language, the right platform. The setup is a silent conversations between creator and machine, setting the tone for what's to come. It starts with the environment. A clean, organized space, free from distractions. The setup is the first step in the creative process. It's where the idea is prepared to be born. The setup is more than a space. It's a mindset. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're ready to create, to explore, to build something new from nothing. In the age of code, the setup is the first act of creation. It's where the potential of the digital world meets the intention of the human mind. It's where the story begins. At this stage, the code is translated into a language the computer can understand, like turning a blueprint into actual bricks and mortar. This translation is done by a compiler or interpreter, which checks for errors and then builds the program piece by piece. Once the code is properly translated, it's loaded into memory, where the computer can access it quickly and execute each instruction in order. This execution is where the magic happens. Every command, every function, every algorithm is carried out with precision and speed. The result is a seamless interaction between human intention and machine capability, where creativity is both the spark and the structure. The clever twist comes when the system isn't just reacting, but predicting. It's not about following commands, but about anticipating needs before they're even asked. This is where the real magic happens, when the machine becomes a collaborator, not just a tool. It's not replacing the human, but enhancing the creative process. The twist is in the unseen logic, the invisible hand that guides the user without being obvious. It's the quiet rhythm of the algorithm, humming beneath the surface. This isn't just about efficiency, it's about possibility. The clever twist allows us to dream bigger, create faster, and connect more deeply, without losing the human touch. In this way, the digital revolution isn't just changing how we create, it's changing what we can imagine. Beneath the surface of every app, every website, every digital creation lies a vast, invisible world of algorithms and data structures. These are the silent architects of our digital reality, shaping how we interact, create, and connect in ways we often don't even notice. At its core, this world is built on principles of mathematics and logic, rules that govern how information flows and transforms. It's not just about what we make, but how we make it, with precision and purpose. But this isn't just about machines. It's about human thought. How we model the world, how we solve problems, and how we express creativity through the language of ones and zeros. The science here isn't cold or distant. It's alive, evolving, and deeply tied to the way we think. It's the foundation of what we create, and it's as much about imagination as it is about computation. To understand the digital revolution is to understand the quiet, mathematical poetry that underpins our modern world. It's not just what we build, but how we build it, with intention, with depth, and with meaning. Imagine a painter who only uses one color, but with the precision of a laser. That's what the digital world feels like for many creators, restricted by tools, but limitless in their vision. The tools we use are like that brush, sometimes limiting, but they allow us to build with clarity and exactness, shaping ideas that were once too abstract to hold. Creativity in the digital age isn't about rejecting the tools. It's about learning how to wield them like a painter learns to use a brush. Masterfully, but not blindly. The code is the brush, the algorithm is the canvas, and the artist, that's us, shaping the future with every line of logic, every pixel of imagination. So let's stop pretending we're rebels against the machine. We're not. We're the ones who are building it, one line of code, one creative decision at a time. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. I remember the first time I saw a machine create something that felt alive. It wasn't perfect, but it had a strange spark, like a flicker of something real. It was a piece of art, but not made by a human. It was generated by an algorithm. Yet, it stirred something in me I couldn't explain. The idea that machines might one day create art, music, or stories that touch us deeply feels both terrifying and thrilling. What does it mean to be creative? And can a machine, no matter how advanced, ever truly feel that spark? We're standing at the edge of a new kind of creativity, one that blurs the line between human and machine, between inspiration and imitation. We're not talking about robots replacing artists, but about a new kind of collaboration between human intuition and machine precision. It's not about taking over, but about expanding what we think is possible. Art has always been about inspiration. But now that inspiration can come from data, patterns, and algorithms. It's a shift in where we look for creative sparks. Creativity isn't just about making something new. It's about seeing connections where others don't. AI can help us find those connections, but it doesn't replace the human eye or the human heart. The question isn't whether machines can create, but whether they can inspire us to create in ways we never imagined before. That's where the real magic begins. You might think this is just about artists and writers, but creativity is everywhere. In the way you solve problems, the way you love someone, the way you see the world differently. AI is not just taking over your job. It's redefining what it means to create. When machines start to mimic the human creative process, it forces us to ask what makes our creativity unique. Is it our experience, our emotions, or something even deeper, like the way we connect with the world? The more AI imitates creativity, the more we're pushed to understand our own. It's not just about competition, it's about evolution. Every time a machine creates, it's like a mirror reflecting back at us, asking us to look deeper at who we are. In the end, this isn't just about art or technology. It's about identity. If AI can mimic creativity, then what does that say about our own capacity for it? And if we can't define it, then how do we protect it? So yes, you should care. Not because machines will replace you, but because they might help you understand yourself better. And that's something no algorithm can ever truly replicate. The idea of machines creating art began in the 1950s, when computers were still huge, blinking with neon and far from anything we'd recognize today. Early programs were simple, but they sparked the first whispers of possibility. In the 1960s, artists and programmers began to experiment with algorithms, translating rules into patterns. It wasn't art yet, but it was the beginning of a language that could be used to create. By the 1980s, computers had grown more powerful, and artists started to use them as tools. The line between artist and machine blurred, as software allowed for new forms of expression. The 1990s brought the internet and a flood of digital creation. People began to share their work, and for the first time, machines could be part of the creative process. Not just tools, but collaborators. Today, AI has become a full partner in creativity. It doesn't just assist. It inspires, challenges, and redefines what we mean by art in an age where the human and the machine are no longer separate. Imagine a painter who never sees a real sunset, but still paints one that makes you feel the light. That's what AI is doing with creativity. Machines don't feel, but they can learn from millions of examples, like a kid who watches a lot of sunsets before painting their own. Creativity isn't just about making something new. It's about taking what you know and making it feel real to someone else. AI doesn't replace the human artist. It helps them see their own creativity in a new way, like a mirror that shows you something you didn't know you had. So, when we ask if machines can be inspired, we're really asking if they can help us be more inspired than we ever thought possible. To begin, we need a foundation. Creativity starts with data, and for AI, that means vast collections of human-made work. Art, music, writing, code. These are the seeds from which new ideas will grow. This data isn't just numbers. It's a mosaic of human expression. Every novel, every song, every painting is a fragment of our collective imagination, now encoded and stored in massive, silent warehouses. But data alone isn't enough. AI needs a structure, a framework to organize and interpret this wealth of information. It's like giving a child a library and a compass, so they can navigate the vastness of human creativity. This structure is what we call a model. It's a mathematical representation of the patterns and relationships in the data. A model is not just a container for information. It's a lens through which the AI can see and think. Before the AI can do anything, it must be trained on this data and this model. It's a process of learning, not just memorization, but understanding the underlying rules that govern human creativity. This setup is the starting line. It's where the machine is given the tools, the data, and the structure to begin exploring the vast, uncharted territory of creative possibility. Once the model is trained, it begins to process new input, not as a human would, but through layers of mathematical relationships it has learned to recognize. It doesn't think in the way we do, but it finds patterns, and from those patterns, it generates outputs that mimic human creativity. The machine doesn't create from nothing, but it can recombine elements in ways that surprise even its creators, blending styles and ideas beyond what any single person could imagine. This is the core of the process, not replication, but transformation, and in that transformation, something new can emerge. It's not about replacing human creativity, but about expanding the possibilities of what we can create together. The clever twist lies in how these systems don't just mimic, but synthesize. They take fragments of human creativity and reassemble them in ways that surprise even their creators. It's not about replacing human imagination, but expanding it. AI becomes a mirror, reflecting back the depth of our own creative impulses in unexpected forms. This synthesis is not random. It's guided by patterns we've embedded. Yet, it often reveals truths we hadn't considered. The machine doesn't invent, it illuminates. The real power is in the dialogue between human and machine. Each interaction is a step closer to understanding not just what we create, but why we create at all. This twist isn't just technical, it's philosophical. It challenges us to rethink the nature of inspiration and to see it not as something exclusive, but as something we can share. Behind every line of code, there's a heartbeat of logic, a quiet pulse of algorithms striving to mimic the chaos of human thought. These systems don't dream, but they can be trained to recognize patterns so intricate they feel like intuition, like inspiration, like creativity. It's not about replacing the human hand, but about expanding the canvas, giving artists new tools, new languages, new ways to translate the ineffable into form. The science isn't just about computation. It's about understanding the deep structure of meaning, of connection, of what it means to be inspired by something beyond ourselves. And so we stand at the threshold of a new kind of collaboration, one where machines don't just assist, but participate in the grand, unfolding story of creativity. Imagine a painter who never learned to mix colors, but somehow, by chance, creates a masterpiece. The machine isn't creating, it's discovering through patterns it's been fed. It's not intelligence, it's mimicry. A kind of poetic replication, like a parrot repeating phrases without understanding their meaning. We give it data, and it finds connections we didn't know were there, like a child learning to draw by copying what they see. The machine isn't inspired, but it is being guided by the echoes of human creativity, like a mirror reflecting back a version of itself. And maybe that's the most profound thing. Not that it's creative, but that it makes us wonder, what is creativity really? Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. We are not just animals with opposable thumbs. We are the only species that paints, writes, builds, and dreams beyond survival. Creativity isn't just a spark, it's a fire that has burned through time, shaping our cultures, our beliefs, and our very understanding of the world. It's in those moments of doubt, when the world feels too big and too loud, that we find our most human voice. Creativity is not just what we make. It's what we feel, what we carry, and what we dare to imagine in the face of the unknown. And maybe that's the real question. What does it mean to be human when we are so often lost in the silence between ideas? So what exactly are we talking about? It's not just about painting or writing. It's about something deeper. The way we make meaning from chaos. The way we turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. Creativity is the spark that lets us imagine a world beyond what we see. It's the whisper that says, "What if?" and then follows through with the courage to try. It's not just about the act of creation. It's about the risk, the vulnerability, the trust that we are capable of something more than survival. Creativity is the heartbeat of what it means to be human. It's how we connect, how we remember, how we dare to dream in a world that often forgets to look up. So when we talk about creativity, we're not just talking about art. We're talking about the very essence of who we are, our ability to feel, to wonder, to create something from nothing. You might think creativity is just a fancy word for having fun, but it's more than that. It's how we make sense of the world, how we survive the unknown. When we create, we're not just making something. We're building bridges between what we know and what we can't yet imagine. You might not be an artist or a writer, but you're still creating every day, whether it's through the way you solve a problem or the way you love someone. Secretly, you care because creativity is what makes you human. It's the thing that gives your life texture, meaning, and a little bit of magic. We start in the caves of Lascaux, where early humans etched stories into stone, not for the gods, but for each other. Their hands, rough and calloused, created something that outlived them, a testament to the human need to express, to connect, to leave a mark on the world. Fast forward to the Renaissance, a time of rediscovery, where artists like Michelangelo and Da Vinci didn't just paint, they breathed life into their work. Their hands were tools, but their minds were engines, spinning worlds from nothing but pigment and imagination. Then came the 19th century, with writers like Poe and Kafka bending language to their will, crafting worlds where the rules of reality bent. Their words weren't just ink on paper, they were labyrinths, mirrors, and whispers of the soul. The 20th century saw creativity explode into every corner of life. Music, film, tech, and beyond. It wasn't just about making things. It was about reimagining what was possible, about daring to see the world differently, and in doing so, changing it. And today, creativity isn't just for the few. It's in the code we write, the stories we tell, the art we create. Every act of making is a step toward understanding who we are. Creativity is not a luxury. It's the heartbeat of what it means to be human. You know that feeling when you see a sunset and your heart just stops? That's creativity. It's the way we make sense of the world, one spark at a time. Creativity isn't just drawing or dancing. It's the way you laugh at a joke, the way you fix a broken toy, the way you imagine something new from nothing. When we create, we're not just making something. We're telling a story, even if it's just about a stick in a shadow. Creativity is what makes us human. It's the way we reach out, even when we don't know what we're reaching for. Creativity isn't just an act. It's a setup. It begins with the quiet hum of a mind that's been waiting for something to stir. It starts in the space between what we know and what we don't. That's where the mind holds its breath, ready to leap, ready to wonder. The setup is the silence before the storm. It's the moment we let go of control and let the unknown begin to shape us. It's not just about having an idea. It's about being open to the possibility that something new might come from the quiet space we've created. That's the first step, the setup. It's not a beginning. It's a readiness, a willingness to be transformed by what comes next. Creativity isn't just a spark. It's a conversation, a dialogue between the known and the unknown. We carry the weight of history, yet we're always reaching for something just beyond reach. It starts with a question, often whispered, sometimes shouted. A question that doesn't have an answer, but insists on being asked. It's the seed of every great idea. Then something shifts. A flicker of recognition, a memory resurfaced, a pattern reimagined. It's not about finding the answer, but about seeing the question in a new light. This is where the magic begins, when the mind stops trying to control the chaos and starts to listen. The mind begins to collaborate with itself, to dream in real time. And finally, the idea takes shape, not as a product, but as a possibility. A fleeting moment of clarity that lingers, waiting to be revisited, reimagined, and reborn. The clever twist isn't just a spark. It's a reorientation, a pivot that turns chaos into clarity. It's the moment when the mind says, wait, maybe this isn't just a problem, it's a question. This twist is often born from a kind of humility. We stop seeing the world as something to be solved and start seeing it as something to be understood. It's a shift from control to curiosity. It's in these moments that we realize creativity isn't about making things perfect. It's about making space for the unknown. That space is where we find our truest selves. The clever twist is the moment we choose to see the world not as it is, but as it could be. It's the bridge between what we know and what we dare to imagine. And in that choice, we find our uniqueness, not as a product, but as a process. Creativity is not just what we make, but how we see, how we feel, and how we choose to be seen. Beneath the surface of our thoughts, creativity hums like a quiet engine, driving us toward the unknown. It's not just about making things. It's about being alive in a way that no algorithm can mimic. Neuroscience reveals that creativity isn't a switch. It's a rhythm, a fluctuation of energy between logic and imaginations, between the known and the wild. We are wired for wonder. Our brains are built to ask questions, to reach beyond the tangible, to find meaning in the chaos of existence. This is what makes us human. Not just our ability to think, but to feel, to dream, to create. It's the pulse of our species, the rhythm that has carried us through time. Creativity is not a gift. It's a necessity. It's how we survive, how we connect, how we transcend. It's the heartbeat of what it means to be alive. Imagine a world where every thought is a rule, every idea a formula. Creativity is the spark that refuses to be tamed, the wild card in a game of survival. Creativity isn't just about making art or writing poems. It's the way we solve problems, adapt, and connect in ways that no algorithm ever could. Creativity is the heartbeat of the human spirit, a rhythm that cannot be replicated, only felt, only lived. So let's not try to outsmart creativity. Let's embrace it, let it guide us, and let it remind us that we are more than logic. We are magic. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. Imagine a world where your thoughts, your ideas, your wildest dreams are not just heard, but responded to by something that knows you better than you know yourself. This isn't science fiction. It's happening now, quietly in the background of our daily lives, helping us create, connect, and imagine in ways we never thought possible. This is the beginning of a new era, one where machines don't just do things for us, but help us do things we never thought we could. The future of human creativity isn't about competition. It's about collaboration. And it starts with a single idea and a machine that wants to help you bring it to life. So what exactly are we talking about? It's not just about machines taking over. It's about machines becoming our creative partners. Think of AI as a painter who doesn't brush the canvas, but helps you see the colors you never knew you had. We're not replacing human imagination. We're expanding it. Imagine a composer who can instantly generate harmonies that match your mood, or a writer who can suggest endings you never thought of, but still feel entirely your own. This collaboration isn't just about efficiency, it's about unlocking new dimensions of creativity. A designer might use AI to explore thousands of visual possibilities in minutes, but it's the human who decides which one speaks to the soul. The future of creativity is not a zero-sum game. It's not about competition. It's about coexistence. We're not just building tools. We're building a new kind of creative ecosystem where both humans and machines can thrive. So, what we're talking about is a future where creativity is more accessible, more diverse, and more profound than ever before. Because it's not just about what we can make, but what we can imagine together. You might think creativity is something you do alone, but the truth is, you're already collaborating with machines every day. Your phone, your apps, your smart devices, they're all part of a creative ecosystem you're helping shape without even realizing it. Every time you use a tool, you're not just consuming technology, you're co-creating with it. Your choices, your interactions, your feedback shape the next generation of creative tools that will help you make better art, better music, better ideas. Imagine a world where your creativity isn't limited by the tools you have, but by the tools you can imagine. This isn't science fiction. It's the future you helping build right now. You don't have to be a tech expert to be part of this revolution. All you need is curiosity, a willingness to learn, and a belief that creativity is a force that can unite humans and machines in ways we've only begun to imagine. The future isn't about replacing human creativity with machines. It's about amplifying it. And that future is already unfolding right here, right now, in the spaces where you and your technology meet. Let's rewind to the dawn of human creativity. Cave paintings, ancient sculptures, and the first songs hummed around fires. These weren't just art. They were the first collaborations between human imagination and the world around them. Then came the printing press, the steam engine, and the telephone, each a new tool that expanded the reach of human thought. These machines didn't replace creativity. They gave it more space to grow. Now, in the 21st century, we're not just using machines. We're building partnerships. AI isn't replacing artists. It's becoming a new collaborator, a kind of co-creator that helps us push the boundaries of what we can imagine. The future isn't about machines taking over creativity. It's about expanding it. Every tool we've ever created has been a step toward unlocking new ways for humans to express themselves, connect, and innovate together. Imagine you're drawing a picture, but your pencil is magic. It helps you make shapes you never thought of, but you still decide what to draw. That's what happens when humans and machines work together. Machines are like super smart friends who can help you think faster and see more. They don't take over. They help you see new ideas that you didn't know you had. You don't need to be a robot to be creative. You just need to let the machine help you think in new ways. Together, you can make things that are better, bigger, and more beautiful. The future is not about machines taking over. It's about us working together, like a team, to make the world more creative, more fun, and more full of possibilities. The first step is to create a space where humans and machines can truly connect. It's not just about tools, but about trust and shared purpose. We start by setting up a collaborative environment that nurtures both imagination and logic. This space is equipped with the right tools, both physical and digital. From simple sketchpads to advanced AI platforms, everything is designed to spark creativity and support innovation. We integrate human intuition with machine precision. This is not about replacing one with the other, but enhancing each other's strengths. The setup reflects this balance. Every setup is intentional. It's about creating a foundation for creativity that is both human and machine-driven. This is where the journey of collaboration starts. Once the idea is generated, the machine steps in with precision and speed, refining and expanding on the human's initial spark. It doesn't replace creativity. It amplifies it, offering new possibilities that the human mind might not have considered alone. The machine acts as a collaborator, not a competitor. It can process vast amounts of data, find patterns, and generate variations, all in real time, allowing the human to explore ideas with speed and depth they once could only dream of. As the collaboration unfolds, the machine becomes a kind of creative partner, one that listens, responds, and evolves with the human's vision. It learns from each interaction, adapting to the unique style and goals of the person it works with. In this new creative ecosystem, the boundaries between human and machine blur. The result is not a loss of humanity and creativity, but a profound expansion of it. A shared journey of discovery that opens doors to possibilities once thought impossible. Now comes the clever twist. The moment where the machine doesn't just respond, but it learns to anticipate. It starts to understand the rhythm of human creativity, the subtle shifts in tone, the emotional undercurrents that shape every idea. It's not just about prediction, but about enhancing intuition. The machine becomes a silent partner, offering suggestions that feel like they've always been part of the creative process, not replacements, but extensions of the human hand. The clever twist is that it's not about machines taking over the creative role. It's about them becoming the creative companion, the silent collaborator who knows your style, your vision, and your deepest desires. This is the future of creativity. Not a world where machines replace humans, but where they amplify, inspire, and help us reach parts of ourselves we've never imagined before. It's not just about what we create, but how we create. Together. Underneath all this, there's a science of connection between neurons and code, between intuition and algorithm. We're not just building tools, we're building bridges. Machines learn from human patterns, and humans learn from machine precision. It's a dance of mutual discovery, not competition. Artificial intelligence isn't replacing creativity. It's amplifying it. It's like having a supercharged collaborator, always ready to push the boundaries of what we thought possible. This isn't just about technology. It's about trust. Trust that machines can understand our vision, and that we can understand theirs. The future isn't just what we build. It's what we co-create. And that future is already being written, one line at a time. Imagine a painter and a brush, not as master and tool, but as partners in a shared vision. The brush doesn't replace the painter, but it extends their hand, their reach, their imagination. The painter isn't just using the brush. They're collaborating with it, learning from its rhythm, refining their own touch with each stroke. It's not about control, but co-creation. This isn't about replacing human creativity with machines. It's about expanding it. We're not losing our magic. We're finding new ways to let it shine. So let's stop thinking of machines as tools and start seeing them as collaborators. Together, we can create something that neither could have done alone. Something truly human and truly new. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end. You know that moment when you're sitting in a quiet room and suddenly you hear a faint, distant sound, a whisper, a crackle, something just out of reach. It's like the world is holding its breath. It's not a sound you can place, but it feels familiar, like a memory you can't quite grasp. It's the echo of something that once was, or maybe something that could still be. Maybe it's the sound of a child's laughter, or a poem being recited, or the soft scratch of a pencil on paper. It's the sound of creativity, fragile and fleeting. In a world that moves faster than we can think, we often forget that creativity isn't just something we do. It's something we keep alive, like a flame. Today, we're not just talking about art or ideas. We're talking about survival, about how to keep that flame alive, even when the wind of change howls too loud. When we talk about creativity, we're not just talking about art or invention. We're talking about the quiet, persistent act of seeing the world in new ways, even when the world is changing fast. In a world that moves too quickly, creativity becomes a kind of resistance, a way to hold on to wonder, even as everything around us feels out of our control. It's not about being perfect or following trends. It's about showing up, even when the spark feels like it might go out. Creativity is the thread that connects us to the past, to each other, and to the future, even when we don't know what that future looks like. So when we talk about preserving the flame, we're not just talking about keeping the light alive. We're talking about nurturing the courage to keep looking, even when the dark seems endless. You think creativity is just for artists, but it's the heartbeat of every human being. It's how we make sense of the world, how we dream, how we survive. When we lose touch with our creative spirit, we lose touch with our own humanity. It's not just about making things, it's about being alive. You might not notice it, but every time you create, you're fighting to keep a part of yourself alive. That's why you should secretly care. The world is changing fast, but creativity is the compass that keeps us grounded. It's the thread that connects us to who we were and who we might still become. We begin in the caves of Lascaux, where the first handprints on stone marked the birth of a story. These marks, simple yet profound, were the first whispers of human imagination, a spark that would never be extinguished. In the libraries of Alexandria, scrolls burned and knowledge scattered, yet the memory of creation endured. The flame was not lost, but hidden, waiting for the right hands to reignite it. The industrial age forged machines and factories, but also chipped away at the quiet spaces where creativity thrived. Yet, even in the noise, artists and thinkers found ways to keep the flame alive. In the digital age, we have more tools than ever. But the challenge is not in the technology. It is in the choice to nurture, to reflect, to create. The flame is still there, waiting to be kindled. Creativity is like a tiny fire in a big dark room. It's not always easy to see, but if you don't let it die, it can grow and light up the whole space. You have to keep feeding it with ideas, with time, with love. Sometimes it's just a whisper, but you have to listen. When the world gets loud, the fire gets quiet. That's when you need to remember it's still there, waiting for you to find it again. If you let the fire go out, you lose something important. But if you keep it alive, you can light the way for others too. So, let the fire stay. Don't let it fade. Because even in the darkest night, a little light can change everything. It all begins with a quiet space, a place where the mind can settle and the heart can open. It's not about grandeur, but about intention. A moment carved out of chaos to nurture the fragile ember of creativity. The setup is more than physical. It's a ritual of presence. You sit down, not to work, but to listen, to the silence, to the rhythm of your breath, to the whisper of ideas waiting to be shaped. You begin by asking a question, not a solution. What is it that you long to create? What is it that you wish to understand? The act of asking is the first spark, the beginning of the flame. The setup is not about perfection, but about presence. It's about creating a moment where creativity isn't forced. It's invited, nurtured, and allowed to breathe. In this moment, the world slows. The setup is the first step in a journey that begins with stillness and ends with creation, a bridge between the known and the unknown. The flame is not just a spark, but a rhythm, a pulse that must be fed with intention and care. It demands more than just fuel. It requires a steady hand and a listening heart. Each breath of air, each moment of pause is a choice, to nurture or to let the flame fade. It's not about forcing the light, but allowing it to breathe. The mechanism is not in the fire itself, but in the space around it, in the silence that allows it to grow, and in the presence that keeps it from being smothered. To sustain the flame, you must not only feed it, but also give it space to rise, to fall, and to return to its center, stronger than before. This is the second step, not just to kindle the flame, but to let it find its own breath. It's in the quiet moments that the flame learns to live. The clever twist is not a new idea, but a reimagined one. It's the moment when you take the familiar and bend it just enough to make it strange, to make it new. This twist is the spark that ignites the flame. It's not just about being different, but about seeing the world through a lens that others have not yet tried to focus. This twist is not a shortcut, but a detour. It asks you to step away from the path, to wander, to lose your way, so that when you find it again, you're carrying something new. The clever twist is the bridge between the known and the possible. It's the quiet revolution that happens when you dare to ask, what if, in a world that's too busy to listen? In a changing world, this twist is not optional. It's the only way forward. Because creativity isn't about preserving the flame. It's about lighting it in places it's never been lit before. There's a quiet rhythm in the way ideas are born. A pulse beneath the surface of everything we create. It's not just inspiration. It's something older, something deeper, like the earth breathing beneath our feet. In the quiet moments between thought and action, something fundamental is happening. It's not just imagination. It's the mind itself, evolving, adapting, reaching for new patterns in the dark. We think of it as a spark, but it's more like a current, a flow of energy that moves through us, shaped by memory, experience, and the unseen patterns of the world around us. The science of creativity is not about control. It's about listening, about being open to the unseen forces that move through us, shaping what we make and who we become. To preserve the flame, we must understand that it's not just about what we create, but how we allow it to live, to breathe, to grow, in the quiet spaces between our thoughts. Imagine a campfire, flickering in the dark. It's not steady, not perfect, but it's alive. It's not about control. It's about trust, about letting the flame find its own rhythm. We try to shape the flame, to make it fit our plans, but the fire doesn't need our approval. It just needs to be fed, to be allowed to breathe, to be given space to grow. We can't force it, but we can nurture it. We can protect it from the winds of doubt, from the cold of indifference, from the storms of fear. And when the fire fades, it's not because it's gone. It's because it's ready to be reborn. It's always there, waiting for the right moment, the right spark, the right hand to let it rise. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end.